I'd like to call City Council to order. I'd like to make sure everybody knows that notification that to the press and to the public were duly notified in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The first thing we're going to do is please feel free to join me as I pray, to be followed by our Pledge of Allegiance and roll call. Dear wise and loving Father, thank you for all you have blessed us with. I thank you for protecting those who laid their lives on the line to protect us, and both here and afar. Now, as we enter the beginning of hurricane season, we ask that you do look after not only our coast, but everyone who lives along the coast and any barrier island. Tonight, I ask for your wisdom and help and guide us in making decisions that affect us not only now, but for years to come. Please look over those who may be sick or have family members sick or have recently lost loved ones. And it's in your most gracious name I pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Marie?
Councilmember Bell?
Here.
Councilmember Cannon?
Here.
Councilmember Perez?
Here.
Councilmember Kinghorn? I see absent. Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Rice?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Ward?
Here.
Mayor Carroll?
Here.
Interim Administrator Prevost? And Attorney Halverson?
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the reading of the journal of previous meetings. There's 4 of them. Special meeting on May 22nd, public hearing May 22nd, regular meeting on May 22nd, and special meeting of June 19th.
Make a motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Citizens' comment. The first thing we're going to do first is have a presentation by the World 1000 Reunion Race.
Here.
Yes, sir, please. State your name, where you live, and what it's all about.
Mayor, Council, thank you very much for letting me come speak. My name is Chuck Bargeron. I live on Tybee Island, Georgia. I represent Sales Series Promotions USA. We're a 501(c) corporation out of Florida. We are looking and seeking permit to bring some boats ashore next May 2019 for the World 1000. The World 1000 is a catamaran race, 2-man catamaran race that will begin in Fort Lauderdale and through a series of checkpoints all the way up the coast, finish in Virginia Beach on the 18th of May. The date that we have set for here would be arriving on May 12th, which is going to be Mother's Day, and they leave at 10 o'clock the next morning on their way from here going to Surfside Beach, South Carolina. When they come in here, they're coming in from Tybee Island. That Mother's Day, they leave at 10 o'clock from there also. Back about the early 70s, 2 brothers that owned a restaurant called World Brothers in Virginia Beach got into a discussion. Some adult beverages may have been involved, but they made a bet that you couldn't sail a little catamaran down the coast, and his brother Michael, the next morning with a buddy of his, packed some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and off they went. And through a series of mistakes and other things, they finally made it down to Fort Lauderdale, where the boat literally pretty much fell apart after they'd held it together. But what came from that is that his brother Chris told him, he said, "Mike, this phone's been ringing off the hook as the press has got onto it." He said, "You could be onto something here." He turned it into what would be today the Super Bowl of catamaran racing. If there's a catamaran race in the world today, it stemmed from the World 1000. The race used to be run 24 hours, and they had a series of checkpoints. They just came in and they checked in and they got back on the boat, whether it was night, day, or what. As sponsors came on board and notoriety got more and more, they decided to add checkpoints. And I think it was around 84 that the checkpoints came in, and Isle of Palms was one of those. It has been one ever since, anytime the race has run from that. Moving on to it, some of us broke away some years ago, designed our own race. I started the Tybee 500. The guys in Texas did the Great Texas 300. The Florida, there was the Pacific 1000, the Hog's Breath 1000 that ran around the Horn of Florida and stuff. But everybody kept coming back to this race. In 2010, Mike Worrell passed away from cancer, and we had since been kind of split up, and things went in limbo. When some friends of mine that were old Worrell buddies, and we've had teams and we participated and raced in it, they said, wouldn't you like to see it one more time? Well, you know, like everything else, I'm getting on up in age a little bit, and several of them are too, and it takes a little bit of younger blood, but there are those that will participate in this race. We know we'll have teams in here from Europe. We know we'll have teams in here from Australia, possibly South Africa, and some from South America. Most likely have Olympic contenders. You'll have Olympic medalists. You'll have the guy next door. They all want to come back and do this challenge on this race. So I'm here not to build the race anymore, but to say what we want to do is my job is to try to keep this race as close as possible to all the original checkpoints going into them, and that's what brings me back to Isle of Palms. Our place of choice to come in, and has been in the past, was the beach directly just about in front of the Windjammer. I'm sorry. I'd already got in touch with and spoke with Malcolm. Malcolm is aware of it and kind of got his blessings on all that. We do bring these boats in, and we don't have enough time to build an event around it. The event we're just going to bring to you. What you want to do with it, you're more than welcome to. If you want to advertise it for your area, they will be watching from around the world. They will be looking at it. These boats will have, these chips or these locators on them, so you can go to the website and actually see where these guys are on the course as they sail it. We want to come in that evening. We want to score and time these boats as they. This is the least amount of time race. You keep the continent on your right, and you go north as fast as you can. And then we want to be able to store those boats overnight in what we call the turtle park. The boats holes are pointed at the beach, wheels come up, they sit on above the high water mark. They stay the night in accommodations around this area here, close to those boats. The next morning at 10 o'clock, it's a launch start off the beach, and we're out of here. The most items that we're going to put on that beach will be some flags. 2 orange flags, the U.S. flag. It might be 1 or 2 teams might carry their own flags. And if they want them posted, we usually post them for them, and then when the boat comes in, they usually attach it to their boat. Sails come down, the boats sit flat on the beach. We're fully aware of your turtle season. We have worked with many of these in the years past. We have a complete permit from all of Florida. We apply for 1 permit with them, and they have their volunteers and designated people that come out and check, look at things. That morning when they come through on their inspections, we don't move anything until we get the clearance so we can move the boats.
Normally we do not take questions and stuff on our citizens' comments, but because of the size and magnitude of this, I am going to allow our council members to question you if you have.
I'll be more than happy.
Yes, sir.
Jimmy, if I may, the one thing you should comment on, this sounds like a massive amount of boats. Would you please comment on what we're talking about? We
have to cap this at about 30 boats. 30 would be sweet if we could get 30 catamarans in this. One of it is because of the width we have to have, the storage of the boats, how many more personnel we would have to have. Let's say if we maximize at 30 boats, that's 2 men per boat, that's 60. They have to have 1 designated ground crew per boat, that's 30 more. My staff, there'll be somewhere about between 6 and 10 race officials, so we're up to 100 people. So we have to cap it at 30 boats. We can handle more than that, but it gets redundant after a while. I don't know if we'll have 30. The most we ever had, the most that I can remember we ever had was 27 boats, and 25 made it all the way to the end of it.
Mayor, the Public Safety Committee actually heard this presentation and voted to recommend approval of city-sponsored status for the Worrell event. However, I think we need to have the chiefs of fire and police have some input that I believe that they'd like to offer in regard to some of the details. So I'm supposed to invite,
Jason?
we'll start with Chief Esri, if that's
Oh, absolutely. This is what this whole is about.
You don't have to run, Joe.
I'm not running, I'm just getting out of the way, I don't want to be,
I like it.
let's just remember the mark.
There you go. So I have done some research and watched his videos on some of their races and read some of their articles. Very organized group that comes in and does their job very efficiently. My only concern is it is a Mother's Day weekend, and when we talked initially, you talked about them coming in about 2 p.m., is that correct?
All depends on the wind. That'd be the earliest they would come in.
So if they're coming in at that time, the only thing that I would recommend is if we make this a city-sponsored event, that we would consider having 2 officers assigned for overtime, just like we do with other city-sponsored events that connect or run, to make sure that we have some crowd control. I don't want anybody to get hurt, and I think that's our most important thing there. All right? Go for it.
I'm fine. Any
Well, you were gonna.
Yeah, I was just thinking, so 2 personnel, I mean, are y'all paying for the personnel?
If we do it like we do other city-sponsored events, it would come through overtime by the city, just like we do with the Connector Run. All that's paid through city funds.
Okay, I'm always looking at the dollar.
I agree, but I just wanted to be upfront with you on that.
Thank you, Chief.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
the city did not contemplate overtime for this event in the FY19 budget that you all approved. There is another option. We could require the officials organizing this event to hire off-duty police officers, which we have done with other events. The cost is $25 per hour per officer, and there is a minimum of 4 hours that they would be required to be there. So that is another option. If you all are of a mind of approving, we could ask the organizers to cover that expense.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, piggybacking off of Ms. Ushery's comments as well, sorry. You know, we had kind of the same issues that we were thinking about with overtime coverage. Typically in a race or anything that involves the water, we typically have 2 jet skis that are out there just monitoring when they would be coming in to try and keep people that might be in the water away from that area, to try and keep it safe. So there would be an overtime cost with us as well. That would be anywhere from 2 to 4 people for the jet ski operation. And then I think with it being Mother's Day and that probably being in one of the top 5 of our busiest days or most crowded days of the year, I think the storage of the boats and then coming in, depending on how many boats that come in at a time, that could be a large swath of beach that we would have to block off. So I think where the proposed coming in and launching might be an issue. And one of the things I would also suggest for the racial officials is for the relaunch the next morning, it will be low tide. And with the sandbars that we have, they need to go and look at where they're going to be launching from and some of the challenges with the sandbars that we have. So those are our 2 things.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Any other questions from the council members? Sir, if you don't mind me, I'll have one question.
Go for it.
Would you be willing to pay for this overtime help?
I'll have to go back to my board on that. When we put this request in, you know, one of the things that I looked at about no tents, we don't want any beach blocked off. You're not bringing in pony rides, cotton candy machines, or any of this such as that. Our staff is fully trained. We don't, you know, if you say we have to do that, then we have to do that. But we are, you know, we put many of these on, and if it's something that's got to be worked into it, we'll just have to find a way to work it into it.
If you could really consider that, because again, public safety is critical to us. This is one of 3 public beaches serving the Tri-County area.
Correct.
And we are slam packed.
I understand
And we
that.
really like to see it happen. I remember the old days of racing 24/7. So, you know, it'd be fun to have you all back, but we have to think public safety.
I fully agree with you, and we're in this as an event, and it is a world-class event, and we don't want anybody hurt, sailors included, or any of my staff or any of my crew. We are fully insured. I gave Desiree a copy of our insurance through Blurpee, and you have to be a member of U.S. Sailing, to which we're a member of U.S. Sailing, to get that. It carries the full amount that you require for any event on the beach. Not knowing what the wind conditions and things like that would be at that day, and if it rains and people don't come to the beach, you understand, regardless of what the weather is, these guys have to go.
Right. I understand. Yes, ma'am.
We did discuss in committee the fact that it was Mother's Day and tried to see if there was alternative timing. But with their race, it seems like there was no other option except to come at that time, unfortunately. But that is unfortunately not a good time for us.
Yeah. There is an option, and I'll throw it to my board. The fact that we do a 10 o'clock start every day, and if the wind's really blowing, those boats can make good time. Like I said, you have world-class sailors on these boats. But if it's not, then it pushes the time. But there is an option, and I may talk to my board about, is that we postpone the start until noon. That could push them to coming in here till later in that evening. But then...
That pushes you late, going into your next stop.
No, the next morning, remember, it's overnight here. Then the next morning we go back to 10 o'clock start and we're out of here. Now, I don't know how many people you have on the beach at 10 o'clock, but once we you know, if the tide's low, then we're more at the water's edge. And they usually like to have that hull, or both hulls, in that water a little bit. These are $30,000, $40,000 catamarans. They don't want those boats eat up.
You think if you could do it at 10, it'd probably be better than 12 because more people come.
No, I'm talking about 12 leaving Tybee coming here.
I got you.
And that would push it later in the evening.
Monday's fine.
Yeah, Monday's not
Monday
as
is
much
no
of an
problem.
issue.
Yeah, I mean,
for
we
us.
have the same issue. In the years past, we've never been able to work around Mother's Day weekend. It's when the season in Florida is winding down, and it's before Memorial Weekend when everything jacks up this way. Their season starts opening up, and we've always been plagued with it. It's a great, you mothers out there, it's a great, no way to take that wrong about the plague now. But we work around it the best we can, and we want everybody to enjoy it.
Yes, sir. If you could talk to your board, that'd be great, and we'd love to have y'all come.
Who would you like for me to?
To Desiree.
Desiree. That's
Thank
the
you
gal.
very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Chuck.
Citizens' comments, number 2.
Oh, did we vote on?
No citizen comment.
You need to vote?
Okay. Do I hear a motion to have this event?
I make a motion that we have this event and that our staff work out the public safety issues as part of that motion.
Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second.
Any further discussion?
I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
want to say, I mean, I think it's great to support sailing, and we don't see a lot of sailing here, and it's as much as we used to. And so I'm happy to bring this back, and I do remember it from way back in the
We
day.
actually had a team from Miles Palms.
Right, I
Yeah.
think it's great, and I'm thrilled to support it.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Thank you, sir. Back to citizens' comment, number 2. Next. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a few comments.
Please come forward, please. Ms. Collette, how are you?
Great, how's everyone tonight?
Please come to the microphone, state your name and address.
Colette Holmes, 753rd Avenue, Isle of Palms. Been a lifelong resident on the island. First of all, I want to thank the mayor and all city council for serving us, and I really appreciate it. I think it's a great thing that you're willing to do that, take your time. I want to comment on the traffic situation that happened this past weekend. At 3:30, I left Harris Teeter and I headed back to 53rd Avenue, and traffic was backed up to 35th. And I'm just wondering why Wild Dunes isn't held accountable for traffic management. They could certainly do a lot better job on getting their check-in in the gate. And also when their check-in leaves at 10 a.m., they need to do something about that. Another thing, there's so many people parking at the beach, and we don't have proper signage everywhere. I think you've done a really good job with the signage, but the street I live on is an emergency access. and all it says is no parking on pavement. It doesn't say resident permit required. Therefore, we're getting all kinds of people parking. They're all getting tickets. They're all unhappy. I also notice a lot of people using the street as their facility because there are no bathrooms in our area, and I've been watching that for years. I'm getting tired of it. You know, so I don't know if another sign about that of doing it in public, you're going to get a ticket, you know, find a restroom. But anyway, that's pretty much what I've got to say. We need to get this traffic handled and taken care of, because it's pretty much the quality of life has gone down on IOP with the traffic.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
One more thing. Really, people need to pay to park if they're not a resident. Or we need to limit the cars on the island, run a trolley over from Mount Pleasant. People need to conserve less cars. And the more people we get in the front beach area, there are facilities for them, they're spending money with the businesses there, and that's what we need. We need our local businesses supported.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Street.
He voted twice.
Already identified me.
So did you vote twice?
Yeah. Vote more often. Hi, I'm Rusty Streetman. I reside at 4004 Palm Boulevard, and I too want to thank the council, the mayor, for all you're doing here for the island. I think we're more engaged as citizens these days. We're getting more done in a positive way, I think, on this island, and it's a real pleasure to see that. I've been living here now for about 35 years, and like most of the Isle of Palms residents, I suspect, on Saturday afternoons, I typically don't get out on Palm Boulevard a lot or go many places off the island at all. You know, I tend to stay either in my backyard or maybe jump in the golf cart with my coonhound, Kimmy, and take a ride around the neighborhood, do whatever we can do to just kind of spot things and see how things are going. So this past Saturday, as Colette had mentioned, I saw the same situation with the backup coming out of Wild Dunes, and it was backed up well past my house on 40th Avenue. In fact, it really was just totally slammed all the way down to 21st, from what I could tell. And I've got some pictures that I'd sent in to the council, and I think they all got that in form of an email from me the other day. It just seems to me that we've got a real public safety issue here. I would have gone to Public Safety Committee meeting with this first, except it was more timely to come to council tonight. So this is just more timely to make this presentation. I'm only going to take a couple of minutes, but it just seems to me as a citizen that from a public safety issue like we've got with all that gridlock, basically, we need to do a couple of things probably immediately. One of them is I would hope that one of our uniformed police officers could maybe help alleviate a little bit right there at that three-way stop where it's all just jammed up. There was a lot of horns blaring the other day on Saturday. This was all at about 3:45 p.m. People on the lane that goes straight ahead down 41st towards the marina, people were making a right-hand turn and breaking in line, and that was causing more issues too, because the regular turn lane to go into Wild Dunes, you know, it was already backed up well past 35th. So the 3 or 4 cars that would get in that left lane would just turn to the right and try to break in, and that was causing some issues as well. So saw that firsthand and took some photos of it, and again sent that to council the other day. So to me, the overarching issue is not the traffic police out there, even though that might help a little bit, but during the high season, we ought to have something in place to address the inefficiency that's going on at Wild Dunes and see what they can do to more expeditiously move traffic in and out of the gate out there. So that's my spiel. That's it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other citizens? Yes, sir, please. Marie loves having notes. If anybody has notes when you speak.
Bill Campbell, living at number 34 on 42nd Avenue, IOP. Somebody's got to address the issue of golf carts. If I see 10 golf carts go by our house, 5 are illegal. We've either got a 3-year-old driver or a 5-year-old sitting on a person's lap. It's absolutely nuts. I don't know. We need to have a policy on it. We need to be able to enforce whatever the rules. Whether you're a sign on the golf cart would say, if you are operating this motorized vehicle, you need this, because I comment and they go, be a friend. I mean, it's insane. We just got to get real with this thing. I don't. Do I need to take a picture of these people as they're driving around and snap, and then bring it to city council and say, "Look at these yahoos"? It's absolutely insane. And the first time there's going to be an accident with a real car and one of these golf carts, it's going to be pathetic. But 42nd Avenue, that's a big cut through now. They just race through there and it's insane. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Citizens comment. Anybody else, please?
More enthusiasm.
Going once. Going twice. Moving on.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to suspend the rules to reorder the agenda to take up item 10 at the bottom, resolution to establish the Leola Hanbury Award at this time.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, if we would, I think Ms. Scott Morris is here. We'll stand in the center out here. Just for... Oh, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am, you come right here. For any of y'all, Leola Hanbury is one of our previous council members, and I was going to ask all those up here who have been affected by her and knew her to come forward, and I said, well, we got only a few left. I can't do that. I leave a couple people out. But Leola Hanbury was a council member, a friend, a garden club member, and Scott and I created this thing called the SEAL team. We had to do things behind the scenes because Leola is still ruling us as we go today. And Scott handled her estate, and it was a long process. But she also did a gift for us. So I'm going to let you handle it from there.
Well, Leola, as Jimmy said, was a member of council, and she loved this island, and she loved this city, and she gave a generous amount of her time and energy to both. So her generosity continues, as it was her express wish that this gift be given to the city. So it's my privilege to present this gift from Leola Hanbury to the city of Isle Palms.
What's the amount, Jimmy?
Whereas Leola Hanbury was a former city council member and beloved city resident who is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for island residents and who was a friend of many employees of the city. And whereas at the June 23rd, 2015 City Council meeting, Ms. Hanbury made a special presentation announcing that she was establishing the Employee of the Year Award in the amount of $500 of her own personal funds to recognize city employees for their outstanding public service. And whereas Ms. Hanbury intended to continue funding such award on an annual basis until she passed away on February 16, 2017. And whereas by her last will and testament, Ms. Hanbury bequeathed a generous gift to the city of Isle Palms to be used for such public and civic purposes as the city council may decide. Now, therefore, be it resolved that city council, in meeting with duly assembled, hereby establishes the Leola Hanbury Award in Mrs. Hanbury's honor, which shall be a monetary gift to be awarded to the city employee who is chosen by city council for his or her outstanding public service on an annual basis, and from time to time as determined by City Council, and hereby acknowledges and accepts Ms. Hanbury's generous request, which shall be kept in a separate investment account and used for the purposes herein stated. Passed and approved by the City Council for the City of Isle Palms, South Carolina on the 26th day of June 2018. Wow. That was her famous saying, the luckiest old lady on this earth. This is a hard one to put in the bank, you know.
I know, but you'll have to figure that out on your own.
I'm going to let it sit here so everybody can see it for a while. That's just incredible. Thank you. Scott, is our job done now?
I'm sorry.
Is our job done now, a SEAL team?
I don't think so. It's just never going to be over.
Mayor, y'all need to vote on the rest.
Okay, so this is a resolution that needs a vote. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I heard a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor hereby say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Thank you for changing the agenda for that. Next on our agenda is Mr. Chairman of Ways and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I thought you were going to call me something else.
No. Ways and Means Committee of the City of Isle Palms met at 5 o'clock Tuesday, June 19, 2018. All members were in attendance. We approved the previous month's meetings, had citizens' comments from Marshall DePass, and also from Kyle Busey, comments from Director Kerr, and we just discussed surpluses, which we will discuss later on in this meeting. We had the financial statement report from Treasurer Suggs through May 31st. And basically, quickly, the general fund revenue was at 83%, 1 month left in the fiscal year. Budgets and expenditures are at 86%. The target through 11 months is 92%. Property taxes are nearly on budget, and the treasurer is confident full amount budget will be collected. Local office sales tax is at 75% of budget with 3 months of collections yet to be paid. Business licenses have met budget and are 12% higher than budgeted. Building permits are running 20% higher than budgeted. The treasurer reported that in June, the city received $128,000 one-time settlement related to an online travel company not paying appropriate business licenses. The auditors were here doing the preliminary work from the field work on a single audit or yellow page, which is a federally mandated audit. Local governments receive over $750,000 in federal funds. The beach renourishment project triggered that for Isle Palms. We reviewed tourism schedules, project worksheets, and then we got into new business. We had a recommendation from the Public Safety Committee to contribute $1,000 included in the fiscal year budget, 19 budget, to the Low Country Community Chaplaincy. And Mr. Mayor, I'll turn that over to you for a motion.
Okay, do I hear a motion for this?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion.
I just want to say, this was in the budget, we're just redirecting it to a different chaplaincy than what the one before.
Exactly.
Just for
And still
clarification.
doing, yeah.
Yes, still Rob did.
Okay, any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Okay, item 2, approval of sponsorship for the Surf Camp for the Carolina Coast Club Incorporated, amount of $1,000 from ATAX funds.
Okay, hearing that, here for a motion.
So move.
Second.
And I hear a second. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Okay, item number 3, approval. This says ATAX overages, but Desiree's going to help me out with this, but this isn't quite correct. It says $259 for ATV and $961 for Easter egg hunt. I understand that the overages for the ATV that was approved by the ATAX committee was something over $400?
No, so what you all need to approve is the overages associated with the ATV. The Easter egg hunt is actually under budget, they're not over budget.
Oh, so just
that was
ATV numbers right?
correct, yes, and
Okay.
that's what you all need to approve.
What caused that trigger to be over? Sales tax or something?
I don't know. I would have to go check the records, I'm not sure.
What was the vote in the ATAX? Was it unanimous?
Yes.
Yes.
And just out of curiosity, since we were under an Easter egg hunt, you know how much under we were?
400.
Oh, wow. Okay. All those in favor of the 259.
I need a motion.
I need a motion.
You got a motion.
Do I second?
I'll second.
All right. We have a $259. Is there any discussion on this? We saved over $400 on Easter egg hunt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it.
Okay, then we had a lengthy discussion of changes to the procurement code. And I'm not going to bore you with all that. Y'all can read through it. Discuss the changes in the scope of work for the boating infrastructure grant. I think I'll let Desiree explain that.
Yes, we are waiting for some more information from SCDNR, and once we do, we'll take this back to real property for discussion, and we'll go through the committee process.
Very good, thank you. There is no miscellaneous business. The next meeting is 5 p.m. Tuesday, July 17th. We will not have an August meeting. And the meeting was adjourned at 6 p.m. I think it was 5:55 actually.
We'll let you slide.
Yeah. Then that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. Public safety.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee met on Monday, June 4th at City Hall with council members Bell, Ward, myself, the city's interim administrator, our chiefs, and our clerk. We heard several citizens' comments that included resident and volunteer firefighter Gary Nessler, who commended our firefighters and police for their work in recent months. Resident Mark Schreiber appeared on behalf of a group of residents who want off-leash time for dogs in the evening. Resident Amy Evans voiced opposition to off-leash hours in the evening during the season. Resident Krista Swindle voiced concerns about pedestrian safety at the intersection of 14th Avenue and Palm Boulevard. Resident and neurosurgeon Dr. Alex Spiota, I think, I forget how to say his name, asked for assistance from the city in helping him off the island during peak traffic time so he can quickly deliver emergency stroke response to patients. Finally, we heard a presentation from on the World 1000 race. And otherwise, the committee received updates on managed beach parking, options for guest passes, microsurfacing of Palm Boulevard, which I believe is almost complete except for the permanent striping of the lines. We currently have temporary striping. And the committee discussed the following, but with no recommendations yet for full council: off-leash hours and licenses for dogs, providing assistance for doctors on call to get off the island when responding to emergencies, allowing volunteer firefighters to have emergency lights and sirens, and the process for undertaking the public safety building repairs. Finally, at the Personnel Committee's request, we discussed qualities, traits, and qualifications we would like to see in our new Chief of Police, and otherwise our next meeting will be at 5 p.m. Monday, July 1st at City Hall.
Great report. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, we have such a kind of a lengthy agenda tonight, and I would like to suspend the rules of order to now hear about the discussion of Carolina Salt Surf proposal. I think we have several people interested in that. I hate to sit here till 11:30. Yes.
I have a question though before we move on. Just with the pedestrian crosswalks, with the micro surfacing, and that's being in peak next week, 4th of July. It's so worrisome because people can't really see the pedestrian crosswalks well with the dark resurfacing. So is there any way to speed up the permanent striping? Because
I will defer to our city administrator.
We have shared, voiced those concerns to SCDOT and have requested that those temporary permanent striping be done as soon as possible. They have yet to respond exactly what that schedule looks like.
I mean, maybe we should chalk or something, at least for the 4th, and it's just very hard to see the pedestrian crosswalks now.
It is.
That is something that we can look at.
Something.
Well, it's, go ahead.
Madam Chair, on the same topic, not only can you not see them well, but when they raise the level of the street, it's almost a flat surface now going across.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a couple
Right.
things
Right.
involved in that. So
I just didn't know if there was something we could temporarily do for the next week.
Yeah, maybe there's something the city can do, some temporary.
I'll go back to city
Measure.
staff and figure out
And
what it is that we can.
keep the things out all the time.
The flags.
The flag, yeah. Those crosswalk, thank you. From now through, I mean.
That's a good suggestion, yes.
Okay, we had a
I'm sorry, I just.
motion to rearrange our agenda for the discussion of the Carolina Salt Surf proposal.
Second.
I'll second.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. I'm going to actually ask these gentlemen to come up and do a presentation for us. I think we've heard from them before.
Hey, good evening. I'm Marshall DePass. I live on 26th Avenue. We were here at the Ways and Means Committee and for our comments, and it was open, a little bit of discussion, and we tried to keep it as brief as possible to be on the agenda tonight to ask for approval for Carolina Salt surf lessons, which actually would take place within the Wild Dunes Grand Pavilion. Something that would take place, transactions off the beach on Wild Dunes property, not on the beach property. So there's so many, studying all the rules and all the regulations, there's so many beach activities, water activities that take place now. Parasailing, SUP, which is stand-up paddleboard. There's surfing going on that actually a lot of local businesses are involved with. What we're trying to do is do it in a safe manner to the Wild Dunes guest. We have the blessing of Wild Dunes. Will Smith is here from Wild Dunes. The letter that you have is the letter of intent from Wild Dunes as well. Can't stress how much that this is taking place on Wild Dunes property, the transaction. No money is being exchanged on the beach. There's so many different things that go on out here that we're just trying to keep it safe as well. We have a license for surfboard rentals, and like during the Ways and Means, the safety of a child or an adult or anyone with a surfboard is definitely, we've heard a lot about public safety, and that's definitely a public safety issue, to teach them how to use that board properly. And it'll keep them coming back to the beach after not having an injury. So it's in the same lines as the rentals with umbrellas and chairs, the SUP, there are volleyball tournaments, there's food and beverage being served on the beach at Wild Dunes, there's photography, there's parasailing, there's golf cart rentals, there's scooters, kiteboarding, yoga lessons on the beach. So I don't know what else if I'd open it for discussions or questions. Kyle Busey is...
Would you state your name and
Yes.
address, please?
Marshall DePass, 28 26th Avenue.
Okay. Kyle?
Kyle Busey, live on James Island. I've been doing this my whole life. I started surfing at 10 years old, turned professional at 17, and as I travel the world, one thing's very apparent: surfing is extremely embraced. When you come back here, it's not so much. As you guys walk up and down the beach every day, there's lots of surfboards in the water. As you noticed, but teaching these people how to properly use them is also very important. We're just trying to provide a very safe environment. To be able to provide these lessons, rentals. So we strongly believe in it. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'd like to have Douglas Kerr come up and give us a little background on businesses on the beach, Wild Dunes versus I think we need a little education. And then we'll have questions from council.
So in terms of what the code allows, there are already two provisions in the code that would allow City Council to authorize this. One, you can do it as a city-sponsored event. I think personally, I think that the language around a city-sponsored event is kind of for a one-time event. Sometimes it's a several-day event, but I think what they're talking about is kind of an ongoing agreement. The other provision that's already in the code is a franchise agreement. That's in the code, is something that you all can do. Basically, you would enter into an agreement with, you probably would have to publicly advertise your willingness to enter into that agreement. If you got multiple proposals, you would compare them against each other and then make a choice as to which route you would want to go. Those are two provisions already in the code that you have that you could work through. And just kind of talking about this internally and looking out at how other cities do it. The city of Folly Beach, I think they first of all, I think they lean pretty heavily on the franchise agreement situation, and they use that. It appears that they also have a provision, and we have a similar provision for photographers that allows, our code currently allows photographers for 1 hour to go out and take pictures on the beach for family portraits or whatever it may be. Folly Beach, it sounds as though they have a similar provision for instructions on the beach and I think it's groups of 2. So, the only reason you could change the code to work in a similar exception for things like what are being discussed tonight. There's always been a fear of kind of opening up Pandora's box to, if you start allowing it, obviously it'll become more prominent, definitely. There are other things that were mentioned. Beach chairs and umbrellas, those are dealt with as a franchise on Folly Beach. Here, we have always held the position that a delivery can be made on the beach, but you can't do any service, and we would classify providing lessons or a camp or something like that as a service, where we exempt really a delivery from being considered a service. There are other little nuances of things that go on out there. The beach is actually public. It has been mentioned here that this would be on Wild Dunes property, but when you're out on the beach, you're in the sand, you're in the surf. That is not Wild Dunes property. That is the public beach. Hence the need to come to this group to get it approved. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
The presenter said that we have all kind of businesses on the beach.
Well,
like yoga, and I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I can tell you that in my office, I bet we contact 1 or 2 or 3 a month, and so it gets advertised. We're steadily,
Contact, what do you mean you contact?
We become aware of somebody doing a yoga lesson on the beach, and we contact them, tell them they can't do that.
I see.
So it constantly bubbles up. I mean, I do think, and I guess I would forewarn you, that there is so much kind of pressure to do it, and it's a lot of work to kind of try to keep the lid on it. I think that if you were to say it's allowable, that there would be an explosion of activity out there. But the yoga lesson would not be legal.
How about the food and beverage service they were talking about?
So another little wrinkle in the business on the beach is they have been specifically at the Boardwalk Inn, they have been offering food and drink for sale since prior to that ordinance. That goes back to the original beach club was in that location. So that they have been providing specifically that in that location since prior to the code.
But they can't sell alcoholic beverages on the beach, can they?
The Grand Pavilion.
At Grand Pavilion, they do.
They can?
Yeah, they,
But it's not on the beach, it's.
Okay, one at a time.
How about the exemption for the parasailing?
there is no exemption for, as far as I know, all the parasailing is out in the ocean and not on the beach. I don't think that they ever are on the beach. They're certainly visible from the beach, but I don't think we...
From your point of view, there's very few exceptions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I went down and spoke to Desiree on this topic this morning. So at least to me, it's clear that trying to do this as, a one-time event is not the right methodology. The question I had and the concern I have with it is if it can be limited as just this company at Wild Dunes through a franchise is fine. If we open up the franchise and we can't tie it specifically to Wild Dunes, and the question I had was, would this have to go to bid? If it goes to bid, can we write into those bid specs, this is a business approved by and contracted by Wild Dunes to be performed only at Wild Dunes as a bid requirement? Granted under that basis, then we won't see surfboard lessons at every other beach because, 10 more people decide they want to do this. From my perspective, I'm totally okay with doing this at Wild Dunes, providing there is a legal means by which we can grant the franchise to Wild Dunes to do it, and it doesn't encroach anywhere else on the island. So Desiree, I don't know if we had an answer to that, but, I was exploring that earlier with you.
We're still doing some research about if the city has the ability to incorporate that language in the requirements. You could include a restriction on the location. I'm not sure if we can say that they must have a contract with Wild Dunes.
Well, Wild Dunes can regulate it at that point, though.
You can request for proposals, and then you would receive proposals from interested businesses that are interested in offering that type of service, and then City Council would be out of a position to evaluate those proposals and make a determination about what business meets the needs of the city.
So am I correct, though, if we just granted a franchise without that tightening, that we could have an abundance of surfboard companies coming and saying, since you've granted this franchise, just like photographers, we now have opened up, to the point that Councilman Ward said, we've opened up Pandora's box to a bunch of businesses and not really the intention of what we're trying to accomplish here. Is that correct?
You could all do an exclusive franchise. It does not necessarily mean that if you grant one franchise, you would be put in a position to approve other franchises. You could all say that you are willing to approve one franchise for surfing lessons on the beach and receive proposals and do it fairly, and you would, everybody who would be interested in offering that service would be able to submit a proposal, and you all would choose whoever you all want to pick.
Councilmember Rice.
I think that Attorney Halverson maybe should look at our codes and look at the franchise part of our codes and see if there's something that could be done to make it work, and that maybe we should even consider franchising some other businesses that are operating out here, like the beach chairs. I mean, are they a franchise?
No.
That maybe it needs tightening and working and tweaking so that we have a handle on it better.
So it sounds like there's two options.
Right.
We could look at changing the code to make exceptions
Right.
for this type of activity, like the photographer, to include those things you just mentioned.
Mhm.
Or you would be looking at doing a franchise, maybe an RFP or something like that, for a franchise similar to what Folly Beach did, where they had several different activities included, like beach chairs, yoga, I think was one of them you said, and surfing. So I think there's a couple different directions you could go in with that.
Councilmember.
I just
Yes,
wanted to follow
okay,
up.
one second.
I'll
Yes,
talk
sir.
to you another time.
I'm going to go back and forth here.
A question and a statement. The question is to Douglas or Desiree. What's a reasonable amount of time if we were to put this out to bid for an exclusive franchise for it to be considered within the bounds of fairness for...
Well, it would certainly not be, it would not be the most expeditious avenue. we would still need to do more research about the city's options and what the franchise would really entail. The RFP document would have to be prepared. I would envision this going through committee level to establish what the criteria would be included in the RFP, the request for bid document. A period, usually 3 to 4 weeks, to receive bid proposals, a period to evaluate the proposals, make a recommendation. So it's a 2 to 3 month process to if you go that route.
Right. Councilmember Ferencz.
Several questions. Number one, these lessons would be from what time to what time? Meaning month to month?
You're looking at Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Okay, so the beach season, basically?
The beach season.
Okay.
You're looking at 9 a.m. to 12:30, 1 o'clock. We like to start early and end early.
And this is booked through Wild Dunes?
Through Wild
So
Dunes.
they're Wild Dunes guests or residents or whatever, and they book through you. Okay, when we're talking about an exclusive franchise, can that franchise language say that it must be contracted by Wild Dunes?
That's what I asked.
Yeah, isn't that what you said? I didn't hear the answer to that, though.
That's what I asked.
We don't have the
You don't
answer
know
for
that,
yet.
okay.
Yeah, we'll have to look at that, but the franchise would enable all of you to put specific requirements of what you would be able to accept.
Just one more follow-up. And where exactly on the beach would this take place? Right in front of the Boardwalk Inn or all along the beach up through 57?
There is a, go ahead, you can explain.
There's got to be a place where there's surf.
Right there in front of the Boardwalk and Pavilion. There won't be any actual physical station set up on the sand. It'll be 100% of the property. Like I said, booking done through them. I've actually have a blueprint marked out here where they have suggested putting us.
It's older because the trees are still there before all that. So, but the boardwalk, the main boardwalk, Grand Pavilion, goes out and they have it set up down to the right side.
It's a croquet field, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a Will Smith's here from Wild Dunes.
North Croquet.
North Croquet Lawn.
Okay, Councilmember.
So I think we should be looking for a way to provide surf instruction legally for visitors and residents. I mean, I would love, and I know many families would love the opportunity for their children to be able to get surf instruction legally on Isle of Palms. For many years, we've had to, they've sent their kids to Folly Beach, which is, just doesn't make sense because it's not been offered here. So I would like to leave the door open, and I think Desiree had mentioned that we could do a franchise, but it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive. Maybe we could leave the door open for more than one operator, and especially if we don't, I'm not sure what the Wild Dunes opportunity would involve in terms of allowing residents to really take advantage of that opportunity. So I'm definitely in favor of surfing instruction. It seems like franchise would allow us to do it in a controlled way, be able to set, if Douglas, if you or Desiree could speak to some of the restrictions that we could put on it if we are, in terms of numbers and that kind of thing as well.
So Folly Beach's request for proposals does a pretty good job of itemizing the things that I think you would want to control. The number of people, the location, the time, the season, the insurance requirements. So I think we have a pretty good boilerplate for what we would want to use and look at if we were to go that route.
I have one question. Mr. Smith, Wild Dunes, would you allow residents, children, adults, to come and take lessons in the Wild Dunes?
Are you referring to
Surf
residents,
lessons.
like outside of the gates? To
Yes, sir.
come
Yes, sir.
to Wild Dunes? Yes, sir. Yes, we
I'm just putting that out there for everybody to hear that, to make sure it's not just exclusively Wild Dunes, but it's a public beach, and if we're doing anything, it has to be equal to everybody on Isle of Palms. Yes, sir.
I'm going to try and wrap this thing up, but I've been around long enough that we've tried to do this one other time, and the biggest problem with it is when we talk about businesses coming to the island is there's always a staging problem. Wild Dunes obviously has a great area where they can stage all their boards or whatever and allow access to the beaches and what have you. And obviously it's all online registration and payment, and there's no transactions on the beach. We, as the rec center, tried to do the same thing at one time. We had a staging area at the rec center to be able to move everything up that way. I think it's a great idea that we can try and move forward. Obviously, there's some more legal wrangling that we could go through. A lot of that can be handled through committee. I know you guys probably want to try and move forward as expeditiously as possible on this. We cannot take a vote on this tonight, but I think it definitely has to real property or public safety move forward and see which way we can go to, in that language, as you know, you cannot, it has to be some type of staging, permanent staging there. So a van can't pull up to a beach access point, unload, a dozen surfboards and start offering a class. It's just too troublesome and it's too congested. Where we have that off-site staging where we can do it, it makes better sense.
Mr. Mayor, one other quick question.
Yes.
The answer is probably no, but I'll ask anyway. Is there any methodology by which the city can grant temporary status while we look at the longer-term status so they don't miss the beach season?
I'm going to look at our city attorney for this one.
I'll have to look into that and get back to you.
Could you do that, please?
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I mean,
one more question.
We can take this on Public Safety Committee, and we're meeting next week. But I think we wanted to get a gauge from the rest of council if there was a will to explore the franchise idea, or if there was a desire to go in a different direction.
If y'all would take it up at your public safety, and our city attorney will kind of do a little bit of exploration, and we'll take it from there.
One final comment.
Yes, sir.
There's a reason the past 30-some years that we haven't had businesses on the beach. And it's a very serious reason. And that we don't want to become a Myrtle Beach. And we open up the door and you say, well, you let these folks in. You let these photographers in. You let these guys in. I've got a disabled veterans organization that we'd like to sell ice cream on the beach. Everybody's got a great story. I'm not saying anything yay or nay, but I'm just saying that we have typically, this council, this body, has strayed away from this sort of business ideas on the beach, and for a good reason. So I hope everybody will keep that in mind as we go forward.
One closing comment, which is why restricting it to one of the most commercialized places on the island already is probably the right approach if we're to give it real consideration, because I agree wholeheartedly with expanding outside of that restricted area. But that's about as commercial as you can get down there already.
Yeah. Just say, I want everybody to keep that back in their mind if they would.
Okay, this is going to public safety next week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, going back to our original agenda. If I'm not mistaken, I think Public Works did not meet.
I would like to announce
Yes,
our
ma'am,
next
please.
meeting. Yes, we did not meet this month, but we will meet Friday, July 6th at 10 a.m.
Great, thank you. Recreation, I think was the same thing, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. And we are meeting next month.
Okay. Personnel.
We met. The regular meeting of the Personnel Committee was called to order at 5 p.m. Thursday, June 7th, and a quorum was present to conduct business. Call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified. Approval of the regular meeting of May 10th and special meeting of May 15th as submitted passed unanimously. There were no citizens' comments, and there was no old business. On new business, we had the consideration of proposals for search firms, which is what we are going to be concentrating on this summer. The chair's homework assignment for the committee members was to decide to study the 5 proposals and decide upon their top 2. After each member and staff reported on their opinions of the firms and a lengthy discussion regarding pros and cons of each, Councilmember Moy pointed out that 2 committee members and HR officers actually mentioned one particular firm, which was also the lowest price as it came to be. There were 2 other firms that were mentioned also, and we suggested that each member of the committee take one of the firms that had been mentioned and call past clients for references. And what we're doing is not taking their PR packet that they've sent to us, But we're going online and finding out who they actually placed over the last couple of years and calling either the mayors of those towns and or the person that was in charge of the search. We capitalized on John Moy's experience in the field and agreed to use his process and questions in interviewing. So we are now in the process between our last meeting and our next meeting, which is in July, calling the references of these folks and seeing just exactly how these firms conducted the search and were they satisfied. Are the candidates still with them? Did they last, more than a couple of months, et cetera, et cetera. So each of us are interviewing and coming back in our next meeting with at least 3 recommendations from these calls. We then went on to the consideration of characteristics, traits, and qualities and the candidate and the ideal candidate for city administrator. And we came up with a list of about 10, but we decided that what we needed to do was go back again and come back at our next meeting and prioritize what's our top quality we're looking for, what's the second. And between the 3 of us, we should come up with at least a list of 10 that we can then give the search firm once we've got them on board. We had a discussion of the city administrator's job description, and our HR officer had not drafted that as of yet, and so that will be coming to our July meeting also. We then looked at the characteristics and traits and qualities of our ideal chief of police, because remember, we're looking for 3 different openings. We've got the chief of police, we've got the city administrator, and we've got Donnie's assistant that will come through this process. So we looked at those particular qualities and decided again that at our next July meeting, we will home in and put the top ones. We realize that all 10 are important, but we're going to try to prioritize the top 5 from each of us so that we can then give the search firm an idea of who we're looking for. We looked at the revised job description of the chief of police also, but it wasn't in a final form, so that will come to us at the July meeting. We approved the job description for the Public Works Assistant Director of Maintenance and Facilities, and I think that that requires a vote.
Okay.
So I move that we approve the job description for the Public Works Assistant Director of Maintenance and Facilities.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Thank you.
Good. Okay. We then had the consideration of Patrol Officer Phillips as Employee of the Month, and there is a letter in your packet to that, and I'm not going to read the entire letter, but I do want to read the first paragraph. Ms. Phillips, on April 22nd, 2018, you responded to a suspicious female on the Isle of Palms connector. During that call, you acted in a heroic manner that resulted in a female who needed mental help being saved and getting her much-needed help. So I move that we consider Patrol Officer Phillips as Employee of the Month.
Second.
Any discussion? Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it.
Our next meeting date is 10:30 a.m. Thursday, July 5th. There was no executive session needed. We adjourned at 6:04. The city vacancies as of now are a conditional officer has been presented for the part-time animal control officer position. The department has filled 9 of the BSO positions and continues to interview to fill the remaining opening. There is 1 sworn opening until the chief's position is filled. All the other departments, all remain fully staffed, so there are no vacancies. And last but not least, our May Safety Sweepstakes winners. General Government is Amy Lee. Police Department, PFC James Taylor. Fire Department, Chris Rouse. And Public Works, Joe Ankrum. And there is my report.
Thank you for a great report. I know this is a tough job for y'all, and I appreciate it. Real property.
Okay, real property. Meeting was held at 4 p.m. Wednesday on June 6th. Council members Ferentz and Ward and myself were present, as were all of city staff required. We opened with citizens' comments. We had similar comments, both from Elizabeth Campson and Arnold Carrig, and those comments were concerning the ordinance 2018-09 as it relates to nonconformance in a SR1 zoning area. Both of the citizens expressed concerns that we are potentially allowing with this ordinance overflow parking or unintended consequences of parking in an area whereby it wasn't intended to be that. Pretty strong advocacy for us to consider in that particular ordinance, not expanding beyond the scope of what the original zoning was required to be. We had comments from marina tenants. Michael Fem of Tidal Wave came forward with an idea that's worth some consideration of, he has worked, or at least had discussions with the bike sharing programs that have operated in other communities, and recommended that we take a look at potentially having a bike share program on the island to help eliminate some of the traffic problems, and had some discussion around perhaps partnering with Mount Pleasant to give them a view that maybe they'd consider riding bikes here instead of parking all the time. So I had agreed in that discussion to bring them forward in the next Real Property Committee meeting, so the bike share company will come forward and do a short presentation to us on what their ideas are. He also, Mr. Fem also commented and asked permission, could he replace the green fence in the marina? For those that don't know, it separates where Tidal Wave Water Sports operates, and also could he, both at his expense, construct a large fence that separates that property from Mr. Philip Smith's property as well. So we were told by Douglas that that is allowable, that he could come forward with some plans to construct those fences. We had comments from Chris Crowley, the owner of Coastal Expeditions, sort of a multiple faceted commentary there. One, that he was concerned that his business was being singled out in discussions with the other marina tenants, and also a perception that we're not as business friendly as we could be on the island. But the responses back to him, I think, were consistent from the committee members that we're not business unfriendly. We're trying to really get our arms around what's the appropriate number of businesses to have operating in a marina. And we have to defer that to the marina operator. That is not a decision that council will make as to what businesses and how many of those businesses will be operating there. We went on to have a substantial amount of discussion that I'm going to limit here about our committee members' feelings of what we can do to gain some control over a marina that many of us feel is at overcapacity. We know we have parking problems. We know we have 19 under-leased businesses operating at the marina. We have a number that don't have leases at the marina, and it's simply a question of when are we impacting public safety? What means does the council have to gain some control of that? We left that discussion with a request for city administration under the guidelines and auspices of what the Real Property Committee is supposed to do for the city, which is enforce lease requirements, understand what those lease requirements are, and we requested of city administration that they contact all of the tenants and get responses back by the 28th of this month as to compliance to those lease terms. And again, I don't want to go into detail in this meeting. We cover it in a fair amount of detail in the Real Property Committee. We moved on to the discussion of Ordinance 2018-9, which I referenced in terms of citizens' comments. One thing, I'd like to make a motion that we just move that entire ordinance back to Real Property Committee for further discussion. We're not prepared to go forward with a vote on that at this point.
Second. Did you make a motion?
I did.
Second.
Yeah.
Discussion?
So,
Go back to me.
What was the number again?
2018-09, the ordinance.
Oh, yeah.
Councilmember Rice?
That's surprising, since y'all discussed it at length. I mean, what will...
Well, stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me, fair question.
Okay.
That ordinance, as it was presented, first of all, we did not review before it came before council the last time, and I made comment during the council meeting on that. That ordinance would, in essence, open up all SR1s to what I would consider non-venue-based usage based on nonconformance. And Douglas, feel free to jump in if I step out of bounds on this one. So it's not as simple as, do we want to allow the construction vehicle worker parking at the Citadel? That would say that any SR1, as was brought forth with the prior administrator, any of those properties under this ordinance passing could be used for a non-specific use. So the intent in the discussion there was two things. We were advised subsequent to that coming before council that we don't need that ordinance to allow construction workers to park at the Citadel as we move forward. So its original purpose, we don't need it for that, hence moving it back. Secondly, and I'll take this time to make this motion, I'll make a motion that we...
We already got one.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we need to vote on that.
Okay, and again, this is something that Douglas brought up and
Correct.
discussed. And, you know, it was kind of like enlarging something that we already have, and it could cause confusing
And unintended consequences.
Yes, sir, please.
While we're talking about that ordinance, just to...
So that ordinance, the one that's on your agenda for second reading tonight, it would have only allowed temporarily situations approved by City Council. So it wasn't going to wholesalely open it up. It also was drafted when there was about 15 or so different properties being looked at. But if the property being focused on has now gone to just the Citadel, you would not need that. You would not need that ordinance. But it was specifically a tweak that would have allowed City Council to address a specific problem by allowing overflow parking at a specific location for a specific duration. So it wasn't really a broadening or an opening up of that. So
okay.
I think,
but for the purposes that we were discussing, and to Douglas's comments, it was when Administrator Tucker brought forward, here's all the available parking on the island, and we were looking at the whole picture.
That's also for employees of the marina
Yes.
as well, not just Wildin.
But the balance of that consequence of the discussion for marina employees was we are still making available the city public property, such as Public Works, for shuttling to the marina property, but also asking of the marina operator. The lease is very specific that employees of the marina are to be provided free parking at the marina site. So we did cover that in discussion as well.
Okay, we have a motion to send this back to committee, and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Thank you.
So further to the point of this ordinance, I would like to make a motion to have the city administrator and our council look at how do we control unintended consequence, if you will. I don't think anyone, any of the residents that I've spoken to would wish to have non-venue parking, non-specific to the Citadel. The Citadel is there to run Citadel events. The Citadel is not there to host other events and use that as a public parking lot. So we know we have a situation where it has the potential to be used as venue overflow. What do we need to do as a city council, if we choose to restrict those venues and to sunset them over time to the use that they were originally intended to do? So I don't know what the wording would look like on that particular motion. I know I've had enough discussions with Desiree and Sterling on this. I think, I'd like to see a motion to have City Council look into that and bring that forward in subsequent meetings so that we can have a vote and a discussion on it.
Sterling, point of order, because it's not on our agenda, is that something we can even vote on and bring on?
Well, I think it's part of his report, so I think what I would ask you all to vote on is just to direct me to draft something to go back to the committee for them to consider, but you're not making
That's
any decisions on what that's going to be.
That's correct.
So I just need to work more, now that I've heard the report a little bit more in more detail, I'll have a better idea of what to draft and then give them some ideas of what they could do.
Second.
So.
You guys second. Okay. So clarification, so what you're talking about is workers' cars only, not a staging area, not an event overflow.
Yeah, I mean, yes, as it relates to, look, we have two choices with Wild Dunes Hotel, let's be real, right? The cars are either going to park on Palm Boulevard or they're going to park in the Citadel, and we all acknowledge that, and that's probably an appropriate use while the hotel's being built. What we are intending to restrict, or my intention through this request, is it is, once that is finished and sunsetted, it is returned to the Citadel's property for the purpose of the Citadel. It is not a venue overflow for the hotel or anything else. And I think we need to tighten that language and be very confident that we're not encroaching on the neighborhoods.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And if we could incorporate the sunset being a certificate of occupancy of the hotel, or
Right.
CO, or final
Something.
completion, would be, I would say, it would be
Sure.
a good point to stop at.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, maybe, Brian, would you consider like that plus a reasonable time for a punch out, maybe 15 days or something?
Probably, yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Okay, trying to
Wait,
move
we
through.
have to vote.
We do need to vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for corralling me.
It's okay, we're good. The ayes have it, by the way, just to make sure, Marie.
I've already mentioned update on the alternate marina off-site parking. We are still willing and able to make the public parking that we have available for the marina. Took myself out of order on my notes here, so I'll apologize for that in advance. We did have discussion around, as I said, we had a very lengthy discussion around marina operations. It would take way too much time sitting up here. There is detail in the notes. We will be reporting out in the next Real Property Committee meeting the requests that we've made of all the tenants in terms of their insurance compliance or business operating licenses and other information. That will be part of the Real Property Committee packet as well. I did ask, well, I'll just skip ahead to update on the dock and repair and replacement. And actually, Desiree, I think at this point, did you want to comment on where we are in that process during the Real Property Committee report, or are we taking this on as separate?
The results of
The RFP.
Well, you may report on it now.
We did issue RFPs for the repair of the marina. I say of the marina, but essentially the docks. We have all those have been returned. I don't know, traditionally, we don't comment on the content of those bids.
No, well, the bid tabulation has been distributed to you all. It's also available on the website where the request for proposal is. It will go back to Real Property for further discussion and study of those proposals. And if you all are comfortable making a recommendation for an award, it would come before Ways and Means and City Council.
I will make my general comment. We were very pleased with the results of those that came in, and we will be able to move forward with some necessary repairs on the marina.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One distinction, this RFP was not for actual work done on the docks, but just the design and what needed to be done.
Repairs.
Engineering, design, and permitting. Correct.
And permitting. There's no actual repairs in those quotes. Okay, just want to make sure everybody understood that.
But it puts us in a good direction to do what we know are necessary repairs on those docks. Update on removal and replacement of underground storage tanks. We will begin the public works site in the first week of July still.
The new schedule has.
You notice I looked at it because I didn't think that would hold through the ink drying.
The pre-construction meeting associated with the public works site is going to be later this week on Thursday, and the approximate start date for the project is mid-July, week of July 17th. So we're moving on.
Good.
I did ask for also under new business the consideration of engaging a real estate attorney. I think we've had, between the marina leases, between other properties that will be discussed as well, we've had a lot of need to look at the city's real estate needs. And, in deference to Sterling, I think she's done an excellent job with us getting through a lot of this stuff, but I have to defer to her knowledge of her abilities and her specialties in terms of do we need for some of these issues a real estate attorney. So I did want to bring it up. I did make a recommendation that we did engage a real estate attorney for one specific project, but I had asked that the full council look at, should we have an ongoing relationship with a real estate attorney that we're comfortable in as each of these issues crops up. And beyond that, it was miscellaneous business, tenant rents report, nothing to comment on there. We had no executive session needed. We adjourned the meeting, and the next meeting will be Tuesday, July 3rd at 4 p.m.
Great report. Thank you very much. I know
Long report.
It's a tough one.
Well, there's too much
Covers
detail.
a lot.
Yeah.
Literally.
A lot.
Okay, reports from city officers, boards, commissions. Accommodations Tax Advisory, minutes are attached. Board of Zoning Appeal, no meeting in June. Planning Commission, minutes attached. Now, in the planning, there is a lot of discussion about drainage. At our public forum that we held, the top thing that we heard over and over again was drainage. And they have requests for a proposal, requests for qualifications. On our request for a proposal for a comprehensive redesign of drainage outflow, we got 3 of them that have to be addressed pretty quickly. I think it's going to cost around $400,000 to tackle that. Now, is this something that we need to do as a proposal and vote on it now? Or is this something that we're going, Douglas, please? Because this is a tough one for us. Yeah. And it's the beginning of it.
I can tell you that the Planning Commission did not want to get too far down the road, and as you all know, they came to you all at budgetary time, asked that you include money for this specific project, but they're off working on their own, and they wanted to be sure that they're keeping you apprised of what they're doing, and just kind of ensuring that they're going in the right direction, and a direction that you all in the long run are comfortable with and will want to support. In your packets tonight is a draft of the RFP that they have come up with, and really a handful of important things. I wanted to pick, just point your attention to, and Mayor Carroll has mentioned it already. This would be the design, survey, permitting, and construction oversight only. So no building would be associated with this RFP. And it's 3 outfalls. They are the outfalls that deal with the largest, lowest, most problematic parts of the island. And that's really where they wanted to focus. But I think the Planning Commission wanted you all to be, again, aware up front that there would be a big chunk of money spent with this RFP, but probably more importantly, the work associated with this RFP would be another huge project. We're kind of calling it Phase 3. You've done Phase 1, 57th to 53rd. You're now doing Phase 2. This really would be Phase 3. So before we, go too far on a really enormous project, wanted to just be sure that we're kind of checking in periodically and being sure that we're going in the right direction. There's a lot of technical stuff in there, and if be more than happy to answer any of the technical stuff, but that's really it. This portion of it is studying, designing, and permitting the 3 outfalls that are dealing with the most problematic area.
Which is 30th Avenue, 3605, and 41st.
Correct. The hope there is really for this project and going on, that we would truly delineate where the high tide is supposed to stop and where the stormwater is supposed to begin, and really have a system going forward. Right now, we're up against Mother Nature with the marsh coming into the system. We're also dealing with OCRM when it comes to cleaning out that system. So we hope that after this project, we will forever kind of draw on the line in the sand and come up with a methodology at which we will be able to get that water out of those drainage basins. And then, of course, there's going to be work. Once we've done the outfall work, then we'll start going into the interior of the island. So it is truly a marathon.
Douglas, just to clarify, this is a very complicated process because it's Isle Palms, it's Charleston County, and it's the state that we're dealing with. There's 3 different entities duties that we have to, and OCRM.
That's right. Corps of Engineers, yeah, everybody would be.
It's complicated.
It's complicated. Complicated and expensive.
But you're looking for council to say, yes, we need to be going forward.
Yeah, and just really, with the specific direction they're heading, or they're heading you all into, and just knowing up front that it's going to be expensive and complex.
Yes.
I have a question. So it's the level that we're trying to deal with is the floodwaters associated with Joaquin.
That's correct.
So, as opposed to Irma, Matthew, the thousand. So I'm trying to, because there have been so many units. So Joaquin was where in the spectrum?
So that's a good question, and there's a very long-winded response I'll try to tailor down. But in talking with David Stevens, who did the design for Phase 1 and Phase 2, about the challenges in creating this document that's going to kind of set the benchmark of the expectations of which we want the system to ultimately perform, David said the most challenging thing that you're going to deal with is creating the performance level that you expect. And he said, different firms will basically go in different directions. Some firms will think, well, the cheap, quick fix and less expensive and would be this, where another firm might take a more comprehensive but higher performance fix, but it's going to be a lot more expensive. David said that their expectation for Phase 1 and Phase 2 was that a major hurricane would not cause structural damage to a house, and they feel like they've met that. They feel like they've met that requirement. They understood that there would be water standing, there would be water in yards. These are all different levels. If you wanted to get it to where it would be completely dry after a hurricane, that would be one level that you could specify. But they really drew the line at structural damage in a hurricane. We then talked about, he said that section of the island, though, is newer. The houses are higher. We're now going to a much lower section of the island with lower houses. So to meet that level, meet that expectation, will be that much tougher. We originally had Irma in there, but Irma in Charleston County pointed out that Irma really was more of a tidal. That was more of an exercise of keeping the tidal waters out, and Joaquin was one that was really more stormwater, rain associated. So they changed the expectation to handle Joaquin without having any structural damage after it.
So are we looking for a vote of council to go forward with this?
I think they just want to make sure that you all.
If you all were to say pump the brakes, we would pump the brakes. But if we have a kind of a...
Don't touch those brakes.
Yeah, all right.
But let council speak up.
Well, I think...
I agree.
I think the fact that we put as much money as we did into this next budget year to handle this problem, I think shows our intent to keep on moving forward.
Totally agree.
I think it's a beautiful piece of work.
Don't touch the brakes.
We call it a sanity check. We just want to be sure we're still sane.
Help us afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well said.
Report special joint committees, none. Petitions received, none.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one question, and it goes back to Board of Zoning Appeals. Douglas, and we had had some discussion on some stuff that we've talked about, on ordinance changes, stuff like that, and I wonder if you've had any contact with the folks from...
Yes.
Okay. I'll talk. No, I'll deal with it later.
I do have, yeah.
Okay, got it.
I have a response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Bills already in possession. Second reading, ordinance 2018-05. Ordinance amending Title 8 Motor Vehicles and Traffic Chapter 2 Stopping, Standing, and Parking of Vehicles in the City of Isle of Palms Code of Ordinance to require parallel parking and to prohibit double parking on the passenger side of vehicles on Palm Boulevard between 21st and 40th Avenue, to prohibit boat trailer parking along the rights-of-way on Woolay Boulevard, to prohibit exemption of emergency, law enforcement, and other public service vehicles parking during the performance of official duties or public service, and to provide for year-round enforcement of resident parking districts. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
I do.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Well, I am not going to be voting in favor of this, and I just want to sort of state that I don't think we need to be doing the year-round parking plan. I just think it's going to create more problems for our residents, especially in off-seasons, December, January, February, when people want to have parties and whatnot. And I know they can get the paperwork and what, it just seems like it puts a burden on the residents. And I still also really believe that I think residents should be able to park their trailers on waterways. So and I don't think that would happen often enough that it would be a problem, since it would be resident only. So I will not be supporting this. I just wanted to state my reasons.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to counter that argument, I would encourage anyone to go on Waterway with a tape measure and look at the width of a boat trailer and the fact that some of that berm is about 6 feet in width, and an average boat trailer. Two things. We already have an ordinance that says anything over 20 feet in the public right-of-way is in violation, right? This tightens that ordinance and causes it to be enforced. It prohibits the trailers from blocking the sidewalk where kids are on their bicycles going down to the marina. And we've had constant resident complaints, which I'm sure Chief Usry would comment on, about trailer parking and blocking the roads there. So totally disagree. This is responsible and in the interest of public safety and the right thing to do. And we've accommodated, under the balance of what we're asking tonight, more parking than we've ever provided for the residents. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to clarify for everyone, the title that you just read out was before we did some amendments to it, and so I'm going to need you all to do a motion to amend to incorporate the newest changes. And so I want to point it out before you go too far with the trailer parking. I took all the trailer parking language out of this ordinance 2018-05, and it's now included in 2018-10, which you're going to get to in just a minute. So the two major changes that we made since first reading were that we added a new definition for what a residential parking district is, and we took out all reference to the trailer parking out of this one.
Separated.
I've enlarged it in the second one, so we'll also have to amend that one as well. So I just want you to know this is basically just going to be talking about the parallel parking, prohibiting the double parking, and some of those other things that you all, and the year-round enforcement. So the trailer parking, we'll just hold off on that part until the next ordinance.
So we need an amendment to this.
A motion to amend.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to amend as suggested by our council.
Which is taking this, be clear on this now, taking out the trailer park.
Second first.
Second. Taking out the trailer portion of this amendment. Is that correct?
That's right, and then we added one new definition. So that's the newest red line and the newest ordinance form that you have, and I actually changed the title of it to reflect that, but that's why it's confusing.
Would you repeat it so Marie and everybody has it clear?
What the motion to amend is?
No, the trailer parking and the new definition. You got it? Okay.
We got it.
Okay.
Okay. Vote on the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Okay, to the original motion. All those in favor, say aye.
I just wanted to make one comment.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the year-round residential parking, number one, I think if we feel that it's necessary to have residential parking on the island, then it's not a question of is it 1 month or another. We're in season all year round now. So if we need resident parking, I think that we need it year round. But I think that Councilmember Rice makes a very valid point that the way that we are facilitating residents the ability to park and have their guests park is really insufficient. And so I think as a council and working with public safety, we need to really address that.
100% agree.
Okay. So heard. Any other questions?
Growing pains.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
No.
Mary, did you get that? Okay, thank you. Now, the next one's going to be a little complicated. We're changing it again.
No, we're in the middle still.
No, the middle one we've deleted. Second reading of ordinance 2018-10. An ordinance amending Title 8 Motor Vehicles of Chapter 2, Stopping, Standing, Parking of Vehicles of the City of Isle Palms Code of Ordinances to prohibit boat trailer parking on Waterway Boulevard, to prohibit boat trailer parking on 41st Avenue, and to provide an exception for vehicles displaying a valid resident parking permit to park with attached boat trailers along rights-of-way of 41st Avenue from Waterway Boulevard to the terminus of 41st Avenue where the parking is not otherwise prohibited. Was there a change to that?
So after that, do a motion to amend, and I'll tell you what the changes are.
Do I have a motion to amend?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the amendments are going to be that it's now going to be the exception from Frank Satilli Lane to the terminus of 41st Avenue. And that'll incorporate what you had in the other ordinance.
Okay.
In addition to what we already have talked about here with Waterway to the terminus. Now we're just extending it, so you've got the terminus all the way to Frank Satilli.
Okay, so we have a second amendment, and any more discussion on that from Frank Satilli Lane to the terminus? On the amendment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All in favor. As for the original motion, all in favor say aye.
Wait. Still, one of the things that Carol brought up, and I brought up before, is just the resident parking on Waterway in the area, and I'd like to make an amendment to allow resident trailer parking in that area, as we have for the past many years.
I'll second that.
Do we address that in public safety?
No, he's making an amendment to run counter to allowing.
Resident only.
He still wants to have resident trailer parking on Waterway.
As we have. Okay.
Okay, so that is a motion and a second. Any other, now I'm going to ask something, because we did allow it down to a certain portion.
To Forest Trail.
Forest Trail, and then stopped. And you want it to be all the way down Waterway Boulevard.
Wait a minute, are we talking about trailers, or are we talking about?
No, just as it has, I meant to allow the resident trailer parking up to, I think it would be, not Forest Trail, it's going to be close, I think it's only going to be up to Duck Lane.
Right.
Right.
From 41st.
From 41st.
Yeah.
So same on this.
So may I? Because I would like some opinion on this as well. I'm vehemently against this because there's no room for it, just for the record. But secondly, as I understand our current ordinances, you cannot park something 20 feet in the public right-of-way. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
So how can you park trailers blocking the public sidewalk on Waterway and be legal within our existing ordinances? So I think this tightens what we're asking. I think the current ordinances prohibit it. We have not enforced them. But to go counter the current ordinance and to willfully block sidewalks, and we've had residential complaints consistently on this, I don't understand how we can even consider that.
I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah, okay, that's opinion.
Yeah, but this is one of the things is, I mean, they obviously you cannot park them illegally. I mean, you can't park illegally. We have cars that park on, throughout the island who park illegal, and we enforce those laws. And there are public safety in a number of places, and I think we need to continue to enforce the laws that we have on the books. And we have, that area was cut out and stipulated for trailer parking for residents years ago, a long time ago. And that was just my only motion, was just to continue to keep that but to make it only resident only.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let's clear this up. Can you legally park a trailer on the sidewalk?
You're not supposed to, you're prohibited from blocking any type of pedestrian access.
Right.
The ordinance is just that you can't park a vehicle longer than 20 feet for longer than an hour anywhere on the island, basically. And so this is carving out exceptions, and right now the exception only is dealing with 41st Avenue. So I think that what Council Member Buchanan is saying is that you want to add back in as an exception the Waterway area.
So if we did this, you could park boat trailers on the sidewalk?
No.
Well, if you go down there, I can't see how you can avoid it.
Exactly.
How can you avoid
one at
it?
a time, please.
Just answer my question. How can you avoid it? There's not enough room.
There are, in some places there are, but, and it depends on the size of the trailer, but there are some places where it has worked historically and where it does not block the sidewalk. And it's for resident only, I don't think, I mean, it's not going to be that many if it's resident only. It's just an exception that I just feel like the residents would like the option. I know there are some residents who want that option.
Councilmember Ferencz.
Having watched this for several years now, and the whole reason this came up to council was residents' complaints.
That's right.
That there was, continually breaking the law. And the fact that now I hear you can only park it for an hour. How many trailers are parked for an hour? They're not. And also the fact that when boat trailers come in, they come in very early in the morning and they park there. You can put a ticket on them. That boat trailer is going to be there until 9 o'clock that night. And it's going to be in violation for that entire time. And that's where this all came up. It didn't come from council, it came from our residents. We heard it loud and clear. And we have talked about this in several different iterations. And we keep saying it's a public safety issue. It is a public safety issue. So therefore, I see that there should not be an exception, that we have talked about this several times, and we should just move forward and make it so.
Councilmember Smith.
I would just add and point out again that we added that space on 41st Avenue for residents to park their trailers, and that's all on the balance of this change.
Before we say anything else, I'm going to look at Ms. Desiree. I think she put a finger up to me and wanted to say something.
I just wanted to make you all aware that the sign plan does not include that exception. So it would mean that we would need to go back to Stantec for them to update the sign plan including with that exception of trailer parking on a waterway. And we would need to resubmit the encroachment permit to SCDOT. That we received late last week.
Okay. All right. Any more comments on the amendment to the original motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those say nay? Nay?
Nay. I said.
Hold your hand up. So we have 2 ayes.
2 ayes on the amendment and the last nay.
Okay, and back to the original reading. All those in favor say aye.
The First Amendment.
The First Amendment,
was
yes.
To include the new change to Frank Satilli.
Yes,
Right.
from Frank Satilli on down.
Did you vote on that?
We voted on that.
That's what we're doing right now.
We're doing what we're doing.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, that's what we're doing right
We're
now.
voting on the first one.
Frank Satilli Lane down to the terminus of 41st Street. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, ayes have it. Moving on, number 10, introduction of new bills, resolutions, and proclamations. First reading by title only, ordinance 2018-11, ordinance amending Title I, Government and Administration, Chapter 5, Budget, Finance, Taxation of the City of Isle Palms Code of Ordinances to provide consistency with the procurement code related to the approval of appropriations and expenditures. Now, this is just more of a housekeeping thing. We went and did this back in February of this year.
I'll make a motion and waive the reading.
Okay? Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Moving on. First reading by title only, ordinance 2018-12, an ordinance amending Title I, Government and Administration, Chapter 10, Purchasing Procedures of the City of Isle Palms Code of Ordinances to provide new exceptions from competitive procurement requirements and to delete reference to the State Budget and Control Board. Now, on this one, this has correction of faulty work, if something does wrong, state contract pricing. It allows more critical, it gives the city more flexibility when something is urgent but does not meet the level of public emergency. An emergency affects the immediate health and safety of the public. This is for situations like during a hurricane. Questions?
You need a...
I need a motion, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion for this?
I move to accept.
Second.
We have first and a second. Discussion, please.
And waive the reading?
The reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Moving on. First reading, title only, 2018-13, an ordinance amending Title 5, Planning and Development, Chapter 4, Zoning, Article 1, General Provisions of the City of Isle of Palms Code of Ordinances to provide a new definition for impervious surface, to delete reference to impervious material and replace it with impervious surface, and to provide additional regulations related to filling or recontouring of lots, ground elevation, and site changes requiring a stormwater management plan. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Because this has to do with our planning committee who talked about the elevation of lots not to exceed 1 foot above the grade of the road, the clearing of lots of 50% of vegetation, if I'm not mistaken. Douglas, what am I leaving out on that one?
Creates an actual requirement for what constitutes pervious at an infiltration rate of 2 inches per hour of infiltration. We don't currently have that definition in there.
And this kind of works towards our drainage thing that we were talking about earlier tonight. So, questions?
Douglas, and it also goes to the definition of impervious material versus impervious surface, meaning that you could have rocks on the bottom, but if you have a hard surface above it, then it's not pervious anymore. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
You want to waive the reading?
Mayor, want to waive the reading? I'll read it if I want to.
I'll make a motion to waive the reading.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? All in favor?
Waive the reading.
Okay, we did Leola. Miscellaneous business discussions regarding a pursuit of a general permit for sand fencing island-wide. Now, after Irma came through, we had a 60-day window that allowed for households to put sand fencing on the beach. We've had a lot of people question us, asking for the permission to do it. It goes back to OCRM. So I asked Desiree to approach them about getting an island-wide permit for sand fencing. To me, it protects our island, it protects our dunes.
Perfect.
So, would y'all like to make a motion to do this?
So moved.
And have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So would we be giving guidelines on how to?
Yes, there are guidelines, openings for turtles, shapes of them, it's, all that's in there. But good question. Hearing anything else, all in favor? Aye. Nays? Ayes have it. Next meeting, I know y'all don't want to hear this part right here. 6 p.m. Tuesday, July 24th, 2018 in council chambers. No executive session needed. Do I hear a motion?
To adjourn.
Second. Second. Done. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Good.
Thank y'all. Y'all had a long night. Thank you.
Thank you.